University of Houston researcher Dr. Brene Brown scored a YouTube hit in 2010 with her TED Talk on the power of vulnerability. Nearly 20 million people have been inspired by Dr. Brown's message that human connection only truly happens when we are willing to put ourselves out there and be vulnerable. But for many people in the non-research world, that's a lot easier said than done, especially when we have stories that are hard to tell. But what if it doesn't have to be that way? What if there's a hidden opportunity in stories that are hard to tell? Something we're going to explore a little further on this edition of the Reinvention Chronicles. Stories that are hard to tell. And this topic reminds me of a phone call, the most recent one I got just a few weeks ago, from a woman who's the CEO of a tech startup, and she's been in Canada for about 10 years. And as we were talking over the phone, she was having a great deal of difficulty sharing some of the trials and tribulations of coming from her country about 10 years or so ago to Canada to set up a whole new life and basically reinvent not only her career, but her whole identity as well. And so there were some stories that, let's say, they reflected on the issues of being a woman in a man's world. And I could tell over the phone she really had great difficulty in sharing that. And I think that's a universal truth. I think all of us have stories that are very hard to tell. Maybe it's a bankruptcy or a business failure. Maybe it's the time you got fired or let go in your younger days, or whatever the story is. These are the stories that deep down we feel that they make us appear weak, and we just don't want to reveal anything about the ugly truth, the warts and all part that essentially makes us human. And I think fundamentally we're so afraid of being looked down upon, being rejected, and who knows, maybe it'll scare away a future client or a prospect or a potential business opportunity. But when you dig down deeper into any story that is hard to tell, it's fear that's keeping us silent. Fear that's making us, that's driving us to conform and making us fit in. But let's stop and ponder this for just a second, and maybe call fear for what it is. False expectation about risk. False expectation about risk. Because when we give into the fear, we lose sight of those 6 important words when it comes to any undertaking as it relates to reinvention. What are we trying to accomplish? I really think those 6 words, those 6 key words, are crucial to any effort to reinvent any part of your business, brand, career, life. What are we trying to accomplish? And with stories that are hard to tell, I think this speaks to the deeper issue of what I call humanizing the digital space. It's something I've been speaking on lately in a lot of my CEO sessions across North America and different industry and conferences that I keynote at. It's yes, the digital space, there's a great opportunity for it to become more human. And if that's something that we certainly want from others and aspire to, then it's going to demand that we share our humanity on the different digital platforms that we currently inhabit. And there's a great opportunity here. I call it a hidden opportunity, actually, in terms of waking up to realizing the more we share our humanity, and the way to do that is through some of these stories that do have beauty in the ugly truth. Well, what happens is it basically enables deeper connections faster. This is the speed of trust on steroids, and consequently, it's about being relevant to an audience that is interested, truly interested, in what you have to say. I know from firsthand experience, this is not the easiest thing in the world to do. I know that because it's something that I went through and I dealt with my own video. It's right on the front page of the website, right on the home page. You can see there's a video in black and white, and I'm recounting a story that I still find painful to tell. It happened in the late 90s, and basically a 20-year broadcasting career goes up in smoke on the day that I was fired. And it's something you don't want to relive, you want to forget, and you certainly for years, and I'm talking years after it happened, never wanted anyone to know. But the truth is, if I was serious about exploring the subject of reinvention and really figuring out at the deeper parts of what makes reinvention human, I had to dig and find the story, and that was the one that happened to me. That was I didn't know it at the time, but it was certainly the crossroads. It was where everything turned in terms of reinventing from a 20-year broadcaster into someone else entirely, not only as a professional, but also as a person. So getting fired, as it turns out, was one of the best things that ever happened. However, it still doesn't take away from the fact that it's not the easiest thing to relive, and even to this day necessarily talk about. Stories that are hard to tell are something that we have to wrap our own heads around, and I know that if you do some digging and do some of your own research, you are going to find some shining examples of where people have done this, and consequently their humanity has come through on these digital platforms that we all populate now. And I think one of the best examples, quite frankly, is the founder of Spanx, Sarah Blakely. Here's a gal that openly admits some things that she might not be comfortable talking about, but it certainly helped form who she is and why she eventually formed this billion-dollar-plus company.
I had always thought I would be a lawyer growing up, and so I took the LSAT. I basically failed it. And I remember at that moment it being this life-changing moment that set me on a different course. And the way that I initially handled it was try again. I took the course, I tried it again, and then when it didn't go as I planned, I asked myself a lot of questions. You know, what is life trying to tell me? Do I have a different path? Maybe I'm supposed to be open to something else. And that's what set me on the journey that ended up creating Spanx.
As far as potential solutions to consider or explore, I think it begins with reframing, and it's less about you and the worry or anxiety, doubt or fear about telling your story. It's about reframing this issue into a question of leadership, because telling a story that is hard to tell is the true mark of any leader. Let's face it, the harder the story to tell, the more believable you become, and no leader worth his or her salt can truly lead unless they are first believed. So here are some final thoughts, some action steps that you could take starting today. Actually do it. Find a tough story to tell, maybe from your personal experiences, your professional life, but whatever the story is, actually do it. Do it on your iPhone. Grab a trusted friend. Whatever piece of video equipment you have, actually do it on a video. You don't have to show it to anyone at first, but get in the habit and start rehearsing and practicing these stories that are hard to tell, because like we said earlier, the harder the story to tell, the more believable you become. If you need a little inspiration, listen to Tom Petty and I Won't Back Down at full volume, because Tom Petty said it best. There ain't no easy way out. There is no easy street to vulnerability, but it does get a lot easier when we decide to kick fear to the curb and call fear for what it is, false expectation about risk. You know, this is the hidden opportunity here on this posting, is to explore not only the opportunity for a higher level of leadership and maybe a better brand, but for you and for anyone who engages in this practice, it's a great opportunity for personal growth. Brené Brown, in her new book, I think, said it very, very well. When we define our stories, they define us. But when we own our stories, we get to write the ending. So until next time, continue the quest as you strive to recreate, reimaginate, and reinvent the business, the brand, the career, the life that you deserve.
seriously, when you were trying to get the concept sold or trying to get it funded, what was, and I now mean this in terms of being a woman at the negotiating table or a woman trying to pitch a product, what was that like, and what were some of the challenges that you confronted early on?
Well, when I think about when you say pitch the product, I mean, I had $5,000 of savings set aside from selling fax machines. So that was what I used to start the company. But when I was going door to door to the hosiery manufacturers and really trying to pitch them the idea, that was the toughest part of my journey. Because it had never dawned on me as a consumer, but everybody making our shapewear and hosiery were men.
Right.
And it quickly dawned on me
that makes no sense, actually.
Right, but then I realized why it had been so uncomfortable, right? Because the people making it were not wearing it, and if they were not admitting it. So I was like, where are the women? I want to talk about this idea. And so I went from mill to mill, and they would always ask me the same 3 questions. They would say, and you are? And I'd say, Sarah Blakely. And they'd say, and you're with? I'd say, Sarah Blakely. They go, and you're financially backed by? And I'd go, Sarah Blakely.
Great.
And they'd show me the door and say, you know, no thank you. I mean, I was breaking into a very commodity-driven industry where they didn't want to slow down the machines and try my quirky idea or what they called my crazy idea, especially when they found out I had $5,000.
So I hear along the way you found a way to get your message across, even dragging people into the dressing room.
Yeah.
I love this story. I think it's important because I think when you're out there on your own and you're trying to get a message across, you have to be brave. You have to, I think, oversell rather than undersell. And I think women tend to undersell themselves while men lie. They totally oversell. They're full of it. They don't mean a thing they say, but they know it's effective. And we've got to get comfortable doing that. But you drag someone to, I love this story because it's a way of saying, look, I got this. Let me show you.
Right. That's true. And that you're referring to Neiman Marcus. Neiman Marcus was my very first account. I looked them up in the yellow pages, and I called the local Neiman Marcus in Atlanta where I lived, and they said, we have a buying office. It's in Dallas. Maybe you should try calling them. I called the person on the phone until she picked up. I said, I'm Sarah Blakely. I invented a product that's going to change the way your customers wear clothes. Will you give me 10 minutes of your time? I'll fly to Dallas.
See, I love that. And you got to think that way.
And she said, well, if you're willing to get on a plane, I'll give you 10 minutes. And I went there, and 5 minutes into the pitch, I mean, I could tell I was kind of losing her.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, everything about this woman was perfect. Her pen matched her shoes, you know, everything. And Neiman's,
One of
was like,
those.
and I showed up with my lucky red backpack from college. I mean, that was my presentation bag. My friends begged me not to bring it. They were like, please buy a Prada bag, return it the next day, whatever you need to do. You cannot go to Neiman Marcus with your lucky red backpack. But so I'm pulling pantyhose out of my red backpack, and this woman's like, and all of a sudden in the middle of it, I go, will you come with me to the bathroom? I just think you need to come with me to the bathroom. And she was like, excuse me, and I knew
Now that's
I had
different.
to show her.
Yeah. And you went in there with her.
I did. I walked down the hall. I went in the stall, showed her without my Spanx, my white pants, and with my Spanx.
Oh, that's good. That's really good.
And she immediately, she goes, oh, I get it. And she goes, it's brilliant, and I'm going to put it in 7 stores. I know.